All right. The regular meeting was called to order at 7 p.m. The regular council agenda for November 3rd, 2025 was accepted with the following changes. Item 4.21, we're going to add the Highwood Management Plan Public Advisory Committee representation. We did realize that that was missing from the organizational meetings. We've just added that. And then we'll also have an addition of item 7.2, tax exemptions, ATIA, section 29, advice from officials. I have a motion to accept the agenda with those two additions. Councillor Saab, all in favor? Motion carries. We will go right into the status reports. Neil?
So we don't have, compared to the last regular meeting, we don't really have too much new to report. We are working on the drawing finalization for the Tom Horniker renovations. We're getting close to being ready to go out to bid when council is ready to do so. The area structure plan work is continuing, and we'll gather pace again in probably in the new year. Tribute wall will probably require a bit more discussions in relation to the Tom Horniker conceptual plan, and we are bringing forward. We will be bringing forward more to do with the wood project in the near future to discuss with council further. Beyond that, I don't have too much for you in that report.
Council, do you have any questions regarding the status report? For our new councillors, this is how we keep track of any of the resolutions that we make, and then it just gives us an idea of where we're at any given time. Councillor Saab.
Thank you. I'm just wondering on the valve and hydrogen replacement. Every year it comes up in council. Is there an end in sight to that?
We do a little bit every year as budget allows. The scale of valve and hydrant replacement required for the town is significant, so we focus on parts of town every year. That program's probably going to be ongoing for a good number of years.
Sorry, we're in the capital plan status already, because we are looking at the resolutions first. We'll go to the capital plan status, and we've got the valve question already answered. So thank you, Councillor Saab. Neil, was there anything you wanted to highlight on the capital plan?
The town, well, just to update council, the town took receipt of the wastewater treatment plant membranes last week, having been shipped all the way from Germany, apparently. They will be installed this week, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that we'll see some significant processing speed increase to help us deal with the infiltration problems.
Anyone have any questions regarding the capital plan status? Not seeing any? Okay. We'll go to item 4.1.1, October 6, 2025, regular council minutes. The councillors all having read the minutes, there being no errors, omissions, or corrections. The minutes of the regular meeting of the Council of the Town of Benton held October 6, 2025 were accepted as distributed. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Miller. All in favor? Motion carries. The councillors all having read the minutes, there being no errors, omissions, or corrections, the minutes of the special meeting of the Town of Benton held October 27th, 2025 were accepted as distributed. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Shields, all in favor? Motion carries. Okay, we'll go right into 4.2.1, a motion to appoint Dave Mitchell as the representative to the Highwood Management and Public Advisory Committee, and maybe Councillor Saab as our alternate for that committee as well. Councillor Saab, did you want to make that motion? Okay, all in favor? Motion carries. Thank you again, Councillor Stott, for noticing that. Okay, we'll go right into the request for decision on organization property tax exemption regulations, otherwise known as COPTR. Clayton.
Okay. So yeah, copter, for community organization property tax exemption regulation. Our recommendation is that council move acceptance of this report. So the purpose of this, the Municipal Government Act provides for this regulation, and under section 362, the following organizations automatically apply. Well, the Net and Egg Society, the Net and Golf Club, the Canadian Grain Elevator Society, the Net and Opportunist Society, Net and Lancaster Society, the Net and Curling Club, the Net and Animal Protection Society, the Net and Community Bus Society, and the Net and Lions. So applications, we take them annually. They can be approved on a 2-year rotation, but we solicit these annually. In August, we sent out reminders, and then the applications are due by September 30th. And this just prevents organizations from missing an opportunity to apply due to such situations where there would be executive change. So we've reviewed them, and we've also asked our assessor to review them. The town must grant a tax exemption to all that meet the requirements. And you can see here, all of the societies are in good standing on the provincial nonprofit listing. There's probably a couple that you're wondering why they're not on here. And we'll move on to that in the next item. But all of these societies, yeah, they're nonprofits. And under the regulation, they meet all the criteria. So it's kind of a formality, but you know, it's this way, and that's for a resolution.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Not seeing any, I will read the motion. So move to accept the information brief provided by administration indicating the noted properties that qualify for property tax exemption under the community organization property tax exemption regulations COPTR as per section 3621N I to U of the Municipal Government Act for the 2026 tax year. The organizations include the Net and Egg Society, Net and Golf Club, the Net and Grain Elevator Society, the Net and Opportunist Society, the Net and Lancaster Society, the Net and Curling Club, the Net and Animal Protection Society, the Net and Community Bus Society, and the Net and Lions, otherwise known as the Scout Hall. Somebody like to make the motion to approve this? Councillor Shields? All in favor? Motion carries. Okay, we will go into the next bylaw.
Sorry, can continue to receive the benefits of being property tax exempt for the 2026 year. So while COPTR, the exemption from property tax is mandatory for applicants who qualify under COPTR, MGA section 364 also allows council to exempt nonprofit organizations by bylaw from tax exemption from property taxation. So in this case, the Nanton Community Center and the Nanton Cozy Corner Association do not qualify under COPTR, and that's because these properties do not qualify as the service is not used by youth for 60% of the time. It's kind of weird, but that's the regulation. But in both cases, these properties obviously would provide a valuable community benefit. Council's provided this exemption for many, many years, and it would kind of be a little bit, at this point, we put them in a tough situation. So we present this in a bylaw for you. And this is permitted.
Thank you, Clayton. Does anyone have any questions, Councillor Salt?
Thank you. Just on that last item about the Community Hall Society. Why would they even be in this at all when they don't own, it's town-owned property to begin with?
Yeah, it does seem a little odd, but under the community, under Copter, they do have to apply because they lease the facility. And so under the regulation, that's the way it is, and this is where we're at. I know it doesn't really make sense, but
It'd be similar to the curling club as well, because their lease includes property taxes, and so they have to apply for that exemption. And cozy corner. Any other questions? We're going to go through all three readings and unanimous consent to do three readings. So we'll start with move to read the Town of Nanton bylaw 141425, a bylaw to exempt certain properties being Nanton Community Memorial Center Society in the Town and Country Cozy Corner Association held as nonprofit societies from taxation for a first time. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Staub, all in favor? Motion carries. Move to read Town of Nanton bylaw 141425 for a second time. Who would like to read that? Or Councillor Mitchell? All in favor? Motion carries. Unanimous consent to read the Town of Nanton bylaw 141425 for a third time was granted by all council present. Who would like to make that motion that we do all three readings this evening? Councillor Miller has made that motion. All in favor? Motion carries by unanimous consent. Move to read Town of Nanton bylaw 141425 for a third and final time. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor McMasters, all in favor? Motion carries. Okay, we will go into the item 5.3 information brief for the traffic bylaw. Neil.
Okay, so this is an introductory information brief. Due to discussions around regulations with respect to school zones this year, administration was made aware of the need to update some of the related content in the traffic bylaw. Given that we hadn't done a very significant review of that bylaw for a number of years, except a small addition to do the significant change to speed limits in 2019, we did a bit of a review, and we're suggesting that we start with this and put it out to the community for some comment before we bring forward a request for decision. The existing bylaw was adopted in 2019, but the repeal and replace at that time was purely dealt with speed limit. It was just speed limit changes and some regulatory guidance on business use of parking spots and sidewalks. We attach a summary document here for public comment and review. The MD of Pincher Creek have been undertaking a process that's quite similar lately, and we did think it would fit with the same initiative here. Based on our own review and our examination of multiple neighbouring traffic regulations, a number of small revisions are recommended for consideration. At this point, consideration only. They're highlighted in the summary document, pending and can be discussed in this and future meetings of council and committee of the whole. A web page will be created, and it will have some explanatory content that I've got in my report here. Just to quickly highlight the areas, one of the first things you'll note that we're suggesting is a change to the definition of heavy vehicle. The existing definition has been complained about since some enforcement was undertaken in parts of town, particularly 28th Avenue, by owners of heavy vehicles. There's nothing really wrong with that definition, and there are other jurisdictions that have a similar definition to that. But based on feedback, we're proposing a change to a registration gross weight of 5,500 kilograms or more, exceeding 12.5 meters in total length, excluding recreational vehicles and any public service or public passenger vehicle. It's not a huge change, but it keeps us in line with some other jurisdictions. But it's been a bit of a rabbit hole, that particular issue, as really there isn't a single community in southern Alberta with the same definition of a heavy vehicle, which makes it difficult to enforce and also makes the frustration of truck drivers somewhat justifiable. However, that's the freedom we have as municipalities. So while we've carefully researched that, we really want to hear views from the trucking community, those with horse trailers, and those with commercial traffic law enforcement perspectives around that. Because we do want to get it right, and we want to find something that's appropriate for this community. Maximum speeds, playground and school zones, that section's been updated to address school and playground zones more fully, in some cases for full Traffic Safety Act compliance for the school zone signage on Highway 2. Parking or standing on highways, that section's been updated to propose clarified regulations with respect to abandoned and broken down vehicles, larger vehicles parked on residential roadways, recreation vehicle parking restrictions, and vehicle length and angled parking. In section 7, some sections been updated to clarify some regulations with respect to how parking spaces on private and government property may be regulated. Some of that content is very turgid right now and hard for staff to understand. Authority for a future council to determine downtown core parking restrictions by policy for both future pragmatism and flexibility. We create the authority for a policy that council can create and review and discuss. We are aware that the Chamber of Commerce, for example, had been discussing whether 3-hour parking was something that might be desirable in the future in the downtown core. This would allow separate policy to be developed on downtown core parking if desired, or left alone if desired. Private advertising on sales of vehicles parked on a highway, particularly in the area that the little silent on. Use of sidewalks, that section's been updated to propose clarified regulations with respect to additional modes of personal transportation that are now in common use that weren't maybe a decade ago or more, and the need to limit speed in some cases. Feedback on continuing the distinction between the downtown core and the rest of town, which has been a long established regulation in this bylaw, is encouraged. I'd like to hear from council on that once they've had a chance to think about it. I'd also like to hear from businesses and other road users, because much was made of that distinction over use of sidewalk. Administration doesn't really have a strong opinion on that either way. Off-highway vehicles, this is a new section based on best practices from other municipalities in the region. Feedback would be appreciated on that. Heavy vehicle truck routes and parking, it's been revised for both current land use designations and a special CAO exemption for 26th Avenue, which was put in place in 2019. That recognized 26th, that particular exemption recognized that 26th Avenue had some truly unavoidable industrial and agricultural haulage. No changes to present designated truck routes are recommended. Snow, ice and debris, it's been updated to propose some clarified regulations around plowed snow windrows and sidewalk gutter accumulation weights. These are matters that come up most years, and the silence on them does create some difficulties. Suppression brakes, damage and hazards. We will probably hear quite a lot about this from the public, from certain sections anyway. We've updated it to propose clarified regulations with respect to engine retarder use and the fact that brake use cannot be prohibited on provincial highways that pass through town. It's not very clear in the present bylaw itself, and that arguably creates a bit of confusion around expectations for the town's ability to enforce. Essentially, we can't be issuing tickets for people using brakes on provincial highways. Approved signage compliance is something that we can make more investments in within reason, as long as Alberta Transportation approves. Obstructions to vision, traffic and pedestrians. It's a new section based on a need for clearer authority to deal with encroachments and trees and shrubs that cause hazardous visibility problems for traffic, especially for major intersections. An argument could be made that the land use bylaw and the community bylaw sort of have that covered. And both carry some of the necessary authorities. We don't feel that they have enough clarity for town staff or property owners on their own when it comes to the specific issue of vision and traffic. It is arguably unsatisfactorily subjective for, you know, what should be pretty clear-cut enforcement and compliance issues. 29, miscellaneous. It's unchanged. The following provision is unchanged from prior bylaws, but from an education perspective around bylaw enforcement and general discussion, it is worth noting when it comes to this in this bylaw and others, that the town is not required to enforce every breach or contravention of the bylaw. In deciding whether or not to enforce the bylaw, the town may take into account any practical concerns or considerations, including but not limited to the nature and extent of the breach and contravention, any financial or budgetary considerations, and the availability of human resources. It's important to underline that we create these regulations for the exceptional situations, the egregious situations. In most cases, our peace officer and staff are not going around looking for contraventions, and we remain complaint reactive. But if we don't have these breaches noted in the bylaw, when we do have these severe situations that we do need to act, we're kind of early. Schedule A on penalties was updated, and we tried to follow the same approach as in the past with a little bit of an update. They are primarily supposed to be deterrents. They're not a revenue generation system. Feedback on the size and range of these penalties would be appreciated. And finally, Schedule C, the downtown core. The map displays the bounds of the downtown core as previously described in Nanton's traffic bylaw. It's not recommended that that be replaced with the downtown land use district because that's it's not very contiguous or easily identified on a map. The downtown core is originally described as fairly useful, but again, the debate is what different regulations would you want to see in that downtown core? Is what we've got correct? Would you like to see something additional, or would you like to do away with the distinction altogether? And that's a potted description. This is just the start. It's not the end, but feel free to ask me any question.
All right, thank you for that, Neil. So what I appreciate is that it is going out to the public before we even discuss it and changes that could be put into this bylaw. And what I read was that we're looking for feedback until January 5th, I believe it was. So, and that'll go out in all our messaging, and definitely for members of council to also just let people know we want to hear from you. But let me open it up for any questions. Does anyone want to get us started? Councillor Miller?
I'd like more information about the Jake brakes or suppression brakes. I honestly wasn't aware that you couldn't use them on north to southbound highways because it's provincial. But with the new school zone, I personally witnessed rigs coming through town at a high rate of speed, needing to slow down in a hurry. And not convinced that's happening, so I'd be looking for input from administration and from our peace officer about how do we get around this? If we're expecting these trucks to slow down to 30 in the school zone, when they're probably still doing 110 at the north end gas station, I see that as a bit of a conundrum. So I'm just looking for more information on how that can work and how do we enforce it?
It's speeding enforcement, basically. The engine retarder brake issue, we're not the only community to have struggles with that. But we've been round the block several times with Alberta Transportation on it. Every few years we send in the inquiry and check with them, and it's basically you cannot prohibit the use of those brakes on provincial highways. You can maybe go after them for noise, but then how are you measuring noise to appropriately issue tickets for that? Within the rest of town, we should generally be okay, but again, if we have lots of semis on 26th Avenue, something else is wrong there. So but it does come up regularly as a frustration by some residents that we don't act on retarder brakes. We could do more with signage, and we are still looking at doing more with signage, where we ask them to reduce their use and not use it, try not to use it as we pass through town, but we cannot prohibit. And that seems to be the advantage. Of course, if there's anyone out there from a superior position of knowledge to us who want to try and give us a different angle on that, we'd love to hear from them.
I'm not looking for a definitive answer on this, but I would like more information from probably from bylaw and from RCMP on compliance to the reduction in speed and how they with the dropping from 110 to 70 to 50 to 30. And at some point I'd like to learn more about whether getting compliance that speed to that.
We could arrange to have our police officer attend a future meeting with some latest data on speeding and warnings and tickets issued. And he's issued quite a lot in the last month.
And so ultimately our goal too is taking all of the feedback and then discussing all of this more robustly in a committee of the whole in January likely. And so that could also be incorporated in the committee of the whole meeting. Councilor Thought.
Thank you. The fact that they're going so quick when they go by the library, I find it very odd. The 70-kilometer speed limit starts at the appropriate place, but it doesn't go from 70 to 50 till it comes around the bend. Why wouldn't we move the 50-kilometer sign just past the perfume section where it really should be? Which might cure some of this jake braking in the southbound lane. Just an observation.
We can certainly apply to what we're saying. My understanding is the town's been knocked back in the past on those questions, but we can always try again.
And so what you were saying, Councillor Zopp, it's 50-kilometer pretty much starting at the gas station, the old Esso gas station. Okay. Okay. Any other questions about the process, about the bylaw in particular? Or we'll just send it out, we'll get feedback and we'll reconnect in January. So what the resolution today is, we're going to move to bring back the traffic bylaw to committee of the whole for January 26th. So it's going to close on January 5th for public feedback, and then we'll discuss it on January 26th. Subject to change. Okay, so we'll need a motion moved to bring back the traffic bylaw for committee of the whole January 26th meeting with the following changes. So no changes at this point in time. We're just open to feedback. Who would like to make that motion? Counselor Strong, all in favor? Motion carries. All right, Neil, 5.4, the information briefed for the draft communications correspondence and social media policy. We always think this is a good one to start a new council off of because you've probably heard lots during the campaign trail, but it also just helps you understand what these policies can look like and offer any feedback to them. And, you know, at any given time, as you guys become more familiar with our roles, we can always open it up again and make adjustments as necessary. So Neil, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, in the case of this policy, every few years we review it with council and update it where seen necessary. Sarah Lynn has tackled it this time with some suggested modifications, nothing too significant, but this is the draft provided is where we will start out. Administration is keen to keep the communications policy as an effective but lean document so that it is somewhat publicly accessible and understood and also handy for staff and council. I'm on a personal level, I'm not a great believer in small towns having communications policies that are like a centimetre thick. We do come across them from time to time. However, it's really up to what council feels comfortable with. If it feels there's any gaps in there, and we will certainly tackle that or change the language in a way that better suits your needs.
And did you want to touch on a little bit as far as how in depth the policy should go? Because you do have separate operating procedures, administration procedures for your staff as well.
Yes, I can talk a little about that. The sometimes you may come across an area that you think is supposed to be in there, but isn't. Usually we have a standard operating procedure or a CAO policy for administration in those areas instead. For example, we have a CAO policy for water stoppages and how to communicate with the public in those instances. And we have standard operating procedures for other scenarios as well, particularly with respect to complaints, so that we can deal with them administratively and also amend them fairly quickly if there's a problem with how the process is going. If council ever wants to look at those SOPs or these policies, I will provide them to everyone. But if it's something where we do have that area of operations in terms of how we deal with the public covered, I will let you know, or Sarah Lynn will let you know, and we'll share that information with you.
For our new counselors, it's just another way to understand how these policies work and kind of keep us up at the higher level and know that at the operational level, they've got their own internal policies that they're working off of that expands based off of our expectations for communication. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So we would love to hear everyone's initial thoughts on this and see where we need to take it. Does anyone want to start us off? No feedback on the communications policy? Okay, well, I do have a couple of thoughts that might get the ball rolling. And I know it was mentioned at a different point, but in the 1.1.2 area, where we talk about when we receive a correspondence from a resident, typically we do include it in future council meetings along with our response. But should we have it in our policy to make sure that they understand that this is going to be in a future meeting? Because a lot of times the general public, they send it just to get it off their chest. But when I respond to them, I always say, just so you know, this is public information. And then they also have the right to say, we don't want this on a public meeting, but it has to be in writing. So I just wanted to clarify that a little bit.
That's all, that's 1.2.
Under 1.1.3.
Okay. Yeah.
I know it's down further as well. I just wasn't sure how that could align or.
All personal information, 1.1.3. Yeah, they have to request in writing that their personal information be severed. But we have to be very careful with how we present that.
Yeah.
They should expect their full message will likely appear on a public agenda and the town will respond. And correspondence is submitted for council consideration. Administration will inform the sender that it may be published in a public agenda package. This notice will reaffirm the sender's understanding and consent for publication wherever possible after a regular meeting. Did that cover it?
Yes, thank you. And then. Under the social media, I was just wondering if we needed a section on, when, because sometimes we turn off commenting from the town page. Do we need to be clear that sometime if deemed appropriate, that commenting can be turned off? And should we also define about that we're not blocking people from the page or that we are blocking? I'm just wondering if that is necessary in the social media.
Generally, we like to leave things alone. We only act when things start to look like they might become a rather unmanageable thing to keep hold of. We do watch out for sensitive language and that sort of thing, and we are aware that we're not going to be moderating debates between individuals, and we're not going. Staff and administration aren't going to be debating with posters. So it's best to move it to someone to move it somewhere else. The social media page is first and foremost an information provider. It's not a moderated forum. And we don't have the time as staff to do that for people. And there are plenty of community forums that do perform that on purpose. However, generally, we don't shut things down very often. We were a bit more sensitive during the election period, but generally we're just watching for anything that looks like it might get out of hand or become a really tough thing to monitor.
2.4.3, all posts and conversations shall remain civil and respectful, and so I take that to mean that if it's not, it will be removed. But we can definitely add in there, if the council would like to have that in there, that it will be removed.
I think it's important to have that in there so that that is clear that there is a line that can be determined by administration to remove or turn off commenting. Anyone else have any comments on that?
Another comment on this area is that municipal liability is also a factor here. We have to keep an eye on what's being said about what and whom, because if it's appearing on our page, there can be consequences.
That's just it. That's why I want to give permission to say, yes, you guys can remove or hide or turn off commenting as deemed. Counselor Soft, did you have a comment?
Yes. Just so I'm not mistaken on something, but our upcoming conversation with Mr. Sharp. Wasn't this social media aspect all part of he was going to address, didn't that? Conversation and our liability, which if he is, why are we discussing this now? Is he overturns something that's being said?
So this is the administration. This is the town of Netton page, not our personal council pages. So Mr. Sharp will be talking about our responsibilities for posting. But this is what the town of Netton's official page, what they're going to do. Carolyn, did you want to add anything to that or?
Not,
For me?
not to him.
Okay, does that make sense? It's gonna come back to us anyways, and it can always come back after our presentation with Mr. Sharp, but that's the intention of his conversation.
You just said it was administration, but administration is told by council. So you-
No, so I have a mayor page that I'll post updates,
Right.
just kind of break things down a little bit more. This is the official announcement. So this is the official notices from the town of Netton page. That's what we're referring to in this policy. And there is a section that covers a bit about our responsibilities as well, but
Mr. Sharp's not gonna talk about that.
he is, but it's an education around that. So if we've missed any points that Mr. Sharp's going to bring up, we can always open this up again and add to it. We're not passing this policy tonight. We're making amendments. It will come back to us at a future meeting. So it's just an initial conversation. Hey, anything else, Councilor Miller?
Have we adequately covered, so in this section, submissions to council,
What number is that?
1.3. But just in general, speaking to this, if a resident in town or anybody for that matter sends a message or an email to the counselor to his nanton.ca address, but it's addressed to that counselor personally, but it's asking about council business. I'm not sure that what I'm reading here covers the issue of the obligation of that counselor to advise all of council that there's been that communication and that it's going to be shared with council. So it isn't a private communication. If it's sent to a counselor, it ultimately becomes public. Correct? Yes or no?
So you're saying in a scenario where someone emails you specifically, an individual member of council, not the mayor, about a certain concern, what is the process for the communication? And I know it's in there, like you're supposed to forward it to the mayor and include all of council and the CAO in it.
Yeah, that's
And-
covered, but not the individual counselor.
I think I did read that to you guys, recall which.
I'm not sure I'm solid on the question.
Somebody sends me an email.
Yeah.
And addresses an issue in town that they don't like, or that they do like. And it's sent to me personally, but in order for me to respond, it's my understanding that I should be sharing that with all of council, which means it's going to go public.
No, it doesn't mean it's gonna go public. You can share it to the other counselors without it going public. You can still stay private. It only goes public if that person wants to share it. And so, after discussing it with all of council, if all of council decides that it should come to administration to go on an agenda, my job is then to follow up with them and make sure they know what's going on a public agenda, get their written approval to do that, and then put it on the agenda. So your communication with the resident may stay only between you and the resident unless you feel it needs to go to all of council. It's the same as if you were to have a conversation with a resident at the post office. You don't always have to share those conversations or concerns that are brought to you face to face. I would expect the same would be for the emails that we receive, if it's handled and dealt with and if you answered their question, it wouldn't need to go to all of council.
I'm not sure I agree with that.
Yeah,
we
will be bogged down with the every one of us had.
I don't get many, to be honest with you.
do I.
Which is why I bring it up. If I do get one, it's probably some really irate resident who has an issue. But just to assuage your concern, I don't get 10 or 15 of them. I think I've had 2 or 3 in the last 4 years.
No, and you're right. May get some, it's usually something, but I think that's where our education comes in. Or that conversation you're having, are you wanting me to take this to council, the formal request saying, I want this needs to be made part of the agenda, the process. Or you can just have that conversation. A lot of times it assuages that anger by educating, right? And Roger, you're very good at it. So that's the kind of stuff that we got to draw that line as far as what comes to council. Because, and honestly, the people gotta do some, the onus is on them to do some thought. And am I mad? Well, often parents do 24-hour remedy. Are you still mad tomorrow? But again, that's our job to do so.
Yeah, and I know.
Up in the air.
For sure, and I know what you're saying, Counselor Miller, and I guess maybe it's to our discretion and a question that we all need to ask is there something that needs to be formalized in the policy? Because sometimes you might get an email that's as simple as my garbage wasn't taken out yesterday, and you could say, oh, you need to contact so-and-so to deal with that. That doesn't need to go to all of council, but you could get something that's seriously elevated. And maybe you need to follow up with them and just say, listen, I think this is a bigger issue. Let me bring in our CAO, and then the CAO can always work with you through that. Or if it's needs to go to all of council, then it can be determined at that level. But is there something you think needs to be formalized in the policy on how that works? Because under 1.3.2, it doesn't talk about the individual counselor, it talks about the majority of council. So sometimes we'll receive an email, it's only like 3 or 4 of us that receive a correspondence. We have an obligation to make sure we include the rest of council in that and the CAO, so they're aware of it. And sometimes it's something light and simple or something that needs to be moved forward.
So I'm just asking, is it a reasonable request to have 1.3.2.1 or something, just to clarify what the expectation is if they send an email to one council? And you can, and no is an acceptable answer tonight.
I'm looking at administration for that. What are your thoughts?
Using council's discretion for the next bit and seeing what you get. We have a new council. And so since this bylaw is only coming as an information brief, let's table that for you guys to see how it goes over the next while and see if that suggestion for you guys is valid or not. And you guys can make that decision. I don't think it's fair for administration to be able to say too much about how council wants to operate. That's up to you guys to decide.
All right.
And section 2.4.6. I think is what you were looking for.
Where the town reserves the right to remove any content that is deemed by administration to be in violation of this or other policies, bylaws, or laws. That's, I did see that, and that's where my question was next to it, the turn off commenting. I guess that's incorporated in that. Okay. Any other questions? I'm just going through mine. I had a few notes as well. Under the recordings, I had a note about, so understanding that there may be times that that we need to remove the video or edit the video, for certain reasons. Do we need to put a note that a video's been removed and for what reason? That a council meeting's been removed and maybe it's under the freedom, like
It
the
would more-
APIA or whatever.
It would more likely get edited to remove whatever sensitive content there was or problematic content there was. It'd be unlikely with the whole video and the video that would be put up would have something that explanation attached that it had been edited for a specific reason. It's not happened yet. But if you felt you wanted something additional in there, we could certainly put something in the policy.
I think it would be important to add something in there just in the off case that we have to add it. I think it's important that we just say this video's been modified because of whatever the reason is, right? I think those are all the notes I have. Councillors up.
Just a question on the video. Is it necessary to keep a video of tonight, let's say longer than a year?
Well, that's something, a year is what we're suggesting here because the whole point of the video record is not supposed to supplant the existence of minutes. And from a data management perspective on the YouTube account in particular, staying a year deep is probably as much as you want to do. It can be longer, it can be shorter, but from a management perspective, it's better to do a purge on a somewhat recent, regular basis.
Was that mentioned here anywhere? Sorry, I missed it somewhere. Otherwise, I wouldn't ask the question.
So item 5.2, council meetings may be live streamed and archived online for a period of 1 year subsequent to the meeting. Does that work for you, councillors? Oh, it's a lot, right? Like, for sure. Any other thoughts, considerations for this policy discussion? The only one, and I might have also missed it as well, for our request for decision, can we, I think we've had it, and sorry if I missed it, but have a communications tab so that council understands and the public understands how a decision is going to be communicated on an RFD.
No, it's not a problem to put it in the policy for sure. But yeah, I thought that's a different
That was
policy.
the public participation. So as far as public participation, but this is the communications element. So if there was a notification that needed to go out on something.
You would simply cross-reference the policy at the beginning of this policy rather than duplicate
Say that again.
the. You would, let's see if I can find it. So basically, you would cite the public participation policy at the start of the communications policy as a related policy rather than have it in two different places.
Mhm. It's not every time the public needs to be participating in something, but sometimes they need to be informed. And so I think that's where my brain goes, is differentiating that this is how we're communicating our communications plan. But I'll leave that with you guys for consideration as you update the policy.
I know now what you're talking about. That was the other point that you had made, but it was on the participation policy and it's been added to the
I
participation.
saw it in the
policy.
participation policy, but I was looking to differentiate between,
Yeah.
because I look at this as how we're going to involve the public, but sometimes it's like, this is how we're going to inform the public on a decision, but they're not always involved in the decision.
Yeah, the issue is to, like Neil said, you want to reference the other policy, but the thing is, if you make a change to one policy and it's the duplicated in a different one, then you start to entangle yourself. So really, you only want to reference the other policy and only have it mentioned once in one policy so that you don't get yourself too entangled.
Maybe we'll chat about that a little bit more and just. Any other comments? Okay, so what happens next is it will, administration's heard our feedback and then they're going to come back with those thoughts and ideas, and then we'll approve it at that time, probably in the next meeting or two. If you have any additional thoughts, feel free to reach out to Sarah Lynn as well. All right, we'll go into so with that, we'll need a resolution, move to bring back the communications correspondence and media policy to first reading, like not really first reading if it's policy. To the meeting, which meeting do you think would be realistic to bring it back? Okay, so we'll bring that back on November 17th. Would somebody like to make a motion? Councillor McMaster's will say. All right, all in favor? Motion carries. Thanks, guys. We will go into the public participation policy.
Okay, so the public participation policy is something that has needed updated and changed for a little while. It does need to better reflect contemporary engagement principles and update legislative references and council's intent to ensure transparent, inclusive and meaningful public involvement in municipal decision making. The original was adopted in 2018. Requiring where it was a requirement for the first time. The intent of this update is to reinforce good governance and enhance opportunities for residents and stakeholders. The key thing here is that while it became a legislated requirement, it was also very clear that it was a policy that could never undermine council's decisions, bylaws, or other policies or decisions. So it's really a guideline, no matter what we have in here. It's not like a bylaw, put it that way. So it's more a guideline that should be followed with best judgment of administration and council. And we did discuss regularly in terms of, does this particular policy need to go out to public participation in some way? Does this particular bylaw require it? Is it statutory? Is it not statutory? It doesn't change the decision making process at all, but it's a guideline. The original public participation policy had some interesting references, which we have updated. We have replaced the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act with the new Act's references. We've removed reference to the Council Code of Conduct language. We'll see what comes in its place eventually. Extended purpose and scope. It defines that the policy applies to council, committees, administration, contracted service providers, and residents participating in municipal engagement. Addition of the STAIRS framework introduces the STAIRS principle to guide all public participation, stakeholder influence, transparency, access, inclusivity, respect, strategic engagement. Clarified administrative responsibilities, strengthened direction for CAO to evaluate and report on the effectiveness of participation tools. As some of you are aware, we use Survey Monkey quite a lot. We use it at least a couple of times a year. We communicate and to communicate results to both council and the public where appropriate. A new clause has been added under responsibilities requiring that all requests for council consideration include a section identifying whether public participation has occurred or is recommended in accordance with this policy. There'll be a lot of instances where it's not recommended, but there'll be some areas where it frequently is. Participation standards and expectations adds clear standards requiring constructive and respectful behavior for all participants, with the authority for administration to exclude individuals behaving inappropriately. Specifies that participation activities must be inclusive, professional, and accessible. Policy review frequency specifies that it should be reviewed once every 4 years, and adds that council may choose not to amend it if no changes are necessary. So again, it's your opportunity to review, make some comments, and we can bring it back at a future meeting.
All right, I know a few of us heard about this during the election, and so we thought it was really an important one to bring in the forefront right out of the gate. Does anyone have any initial feedback on this draft version of the policy? Are you liking what you see? Can we pass it tonight? If there's no feedback. You're good to make a motion to pass it as presented? Okay, Councillor Mitchell's made the motion to approve the public participation policy as presented this evening. All in favor? Motion carried. That's an easy one. All right, we'll go into the information brief for the draft procedural bylaw.
So the procedure to outline substantive amendments to the town's procedural bylaw to align with current legislative requirements, updated governance practices, and to clarify rules of order for council and committee meetings. The existing bylaw governs the conduct and process of council and committee meetings following the election. Administration reviewed the bylaw for legislative compliance. The new bylaw incorporates legislative changes under the Access to Information and Protection of Privacy Act. It reflects updated provincial requirements under the Municipal Government Act and modernizes procedures to ensure transparent council operation. Now, again, once we have more clarity on codes of conduct, we may have to open it up once again, but right now we just need to update it to remove those references. Legislative and so clarified application and purpose, simplified and restructured introductory clauses to clearly define the purpose, regulate the proceedings of council and its committees while emphasizing accountability and transparency. Organizational meeting revisions. Again, added explicit requirements from the MGA mandating that all councillors must complete prescribed orientation. Clarified the oath of office must be taken prior to or at the beginning of the organizational meeting. Standardized council meeting scheduling language and included limits for regular 4-hour and special 3-hour meeting. Agenda meeting management, clarified agenda preparation timelines, submissions due 7 calendar days prior to the meeting. Strengthen CAO authority regarding correspondence handling, aligning with the communications policy. Conduct during meetings, removed member conduct section for the reasons I just mentioned regarding code of conduct. Replaced with a general conduct at meeting section applying to all persons present. Added clear authority for the mayor or chair to remove disruptive individuals and reference to the town's electronic equipment policy for third-party equipment. it's not a substantive amount of change, but it is, it is, well, it is substantive, but it's not a great deal of change.
All right. We'll open it up. Does anyone have any questions on the procedural bylaw? Councillor Miller?
Just curious, when visitors come to sit in the gallery, I've heard it stated verbally, but I'm not sure that it's been made very clear that recording devices are not allowed. Huh?
And it's on,
I do have a notice on the wall.
and I believe it's
Yeah.
11.4, because I looked for this one as well. Use of third-party electronic equipment in council chambers is governed by the town of Denton electronic equipment policy as amended from time to time.
Okay, it's there and there is a sign, but are people really aware that it's? Huh? Or
Well,
not-
and it's also up to the chair to ask them to stop or leave, so it would be,
No, I don't even want to give them the chance to bring it out.
right?
So the sign needs to be maybe on the door or bigger or blinking or something. Because I have observed people sitting here recording our sessions, and that's in violation of this policy. But in fairness to them, I want to be sure that it's clear that you shall not do this in chambers. So that's all I'm asking for, is some clarity. Maybe it's a bigger sign, whatever. I don't think the chair should have to deal with that.
Well, in that one time in particular, I didn't see it because of where they were sitting, and I remember a couple of counselors noticing it, that they were behind the CAO, so we caught it afterwards, so we'll just leave that feedback with you guys. Any other feedback on this bylaw? I think I had a couple of notes. So it was under that same 11.2 conduct at meetings. Can we add something about like signs not being permitted? Because we've also had people that brought in kind of protest signs at one point. And so I was thinking we should probably incorporate that. And then so periodically, a resident may show up to a meeting because they think that's where you can ask questions. And so this always comes up, so I just thought it was important to bring it up to the new council as well. Is periodically we'll just have a resident show up and say, hey, I have a question about trees or whatever it is. And so they think they can ask in open session. We don't have a parameter for people to ask questions. Some municipalities, Diamond Valley in particular, they have a 15-minute window that they can open up questions to the public that might be there. But there comes with a lot of grayness. This is a business meeting. But I think it's important for council to kind of discuss what that could look like. I think personally, the procedure should be if somebody does attend, usually I'll go up to them and introduce myself, find out why they're at the meeting. Sometimes they're just here because they're curious, but sometimes they might have a question and we can just say, you know what, I need you to contact Clayton tomorrow and he'll help you through that or whatever the situation is. We try to flush it out before. But again, it was brought up during the election that, you know, should we have an opportunity for the general public to ask questions. It doesn't mean we necessarily have the answers. It's likely directing them to come back as delegation or talk to Sarah Lynn, but I wanted to bring that up in here from council, what your thoughts were, or what you might have heard on the campaign trail, or if you're good with how this procedural bylaw is that the councilors up.
Thank you. I'm not in favor of that. Because there are people in this town who will come and ask some
to them, deep questions, whether it's about planning or whatever. And we're expecting administration to have them answers right now and not provide I think, full explanation to that question. So when they come and ask, they don't get the answer that they're looking right away. I see it just backfiring that whole process. I think it should stay as it is. They could submit the question and it can be answered at the council meeting, but not live. I just think it's heading for disaster myself.
So I've actually been giving this some thought because I did hear this throughout the campaign trail. And I'm sure this has probably been discussed over and over and over again. People were asking about, you know, public forums, the ability to stand up and ask questions. And I agree with Councillor Zopp in that I don't think the council meetings are the place for it. However, is there an opportunity to maybe have once a year or twice a year where questions are submitted to administration for preparation, and people can then come up and ask their questions basically face to face? I think that might take away a little bit of the nobody will talk to us attitude.
Rookie move. I wonder if that's something we can work on through our strategic planning as far as, you know, how we're engaging with the public and the opportunities that we have, be it through coffee with council or larger format situations, and kind of figure out what that can look like for this council.
Yeah,
I think that sounds good.
And I think it'll also be captured a bit in the public participation policy too. So for bigger single issue items, they'll have opportunities to ask questions at those times as well.
Okay, thank you.
And then item 12.3. This is about when a member of council joins via Zoom for various reasons. We've had people that are at work or not feeling well or on a beach somewhere and they still want to join council meetings. I just wanted to be clear that the video needs to be on for us to determine that they're still in attendance. So I know it says like the connection remains active, but I think being clear that it's actually their face is there and that we know they're present in the room. Does that make sense? Okay, any other points? Councillor Miller.
I hear you and I understand why that's important, but having been the casualty of that technology issue, I recall calling in from Montreal when the connection failed and we ended up on the phone. So to have a hard and fast policy that says you got to see your face on the internet, whatever that is, screen, can't be adhered to. So there's going to be times when, due to technology, it isn't going to work. So
No,
we
I
need to
can
have some
appreciate-
flexibility. If we're going to have a clause like that, then there has to be an escape clause too.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. And I think like I remember a member of council from City of Calgary, and he attended a meeting on a golf course and he didn't have the screen on, but he was attending and it all came out. And so I think those are the extreme cases. And so kind of bridging that gap because people could perceive like, well, if he's at a golf course, is he drinking? What's he doing? Right. So, Carolyn, what are your thoughts?
I'm gonna research that one because something's twinging in my brain from something I've attended that you might have to be on screen. But I will find the reasoning and all of that behind it and research that. If we put that in there, I think there has to be, there's something
I
that
think
twinges
you're
in
right,
my
and I
brain.
think we noted that you were in attendance, but you weren't able to participate, like you were more observing the meeting and listening to the meeting. But we still included you in a couple of conversations, but you couldn't vote and things like that. When we were in that situation.
Now, that's not the incident I'm referring to. I recall that one, but the one in particular was, I was in Montreal
Mhm.
and the connection failed. It was 2 hours later in Montreal. And it's a situation that could easily occur again for myself or any other member of council.
Mhm.
So if there's a hard and fast rule that you have to be visible, then that means that councillor cannot participate. That's what it means, and that's what it says.
For sure.
And I have a problem with that.
We'll leave that to Sarah Lynn to flush out and see what the MGA and the other regulations see and see what our options are there. Any other comments regarding this procedural bylaw? Not seeing any, so at this point in time, is November 17th reasonable to bring this one back as well?
Yeah.
Move to bring back the procedural bylaw for first reading to the November 17th meeting with the recommendations that we made tonight. Who would like to make that motion? Councillor Shields, all in favor? Motion carried. Thanks, Carolyn, for your work on this. We'll go into correspondence. Item 6.1.2 is the Rowan House request for proclamation. Violence Prevention Month. And so periodically we'll get these requests and we typically do just have them, but we like to have them on record as well. And we'll need a motion to approve that. Would somebody like to make the motion? Councillor Strong, all in favor? Motion carried. Livingston Range School Division regarding the enhanced committee, and a letter just, detailing what overages could look like and who would be responsible if there was overages. So we've got that formalized. Item 6.2.1, Mayor and Reeves of Southwest Alberta, agenda and minutes. I believe you had a note on that, Neil, did you?
No, I didn't have anything here on this one, but does council have any questions regarding this report?
I just got the highlighted, it appears that the HLC is flagging friends groups where there's an overlap between the Friends and the library board. This will present a challenge for Friends of Chinook Arch, but especially so for small rural Friends Society. So I think it's something that'll be important for us to just be aware of. I don't think it's coming out yet, but if reviewing the rules and regulations for casinos that could have serious impacts for some of our societies and our boards. So we just want to keep our ears to the ground of things coming out there. Intermunicipal Collaboration Framework Committee minutes and the Old Man River Regional Services Commission regarding the new CAO. Okay, at this point in time, at 8:18, it was moved to hold closed confidential session pursuant to section 1972 of the Municipal Government Act, RSA 2000, Chapter M26 and the Access to Information Act, ATIA, as follows. Item 7.1, Municipal Lands, ATIA, Section 26, Disclosure Harmful to Intergovernmental Relations, and Section 29, Advice from Officials, and item 7.2, Tax Exemptions, ATIA, Section 29, Advice from Officials. I have a motion to go into closed, please. Councillor Saab.